Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we call our study through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We are in the section called Sea Drift. We are at poem number 8, On the Beach at Night Alone. Of course, poem number 8 of the 11 of Sea Drift. Now, this is not to be confused with the poem that was 2 poems ago, On the Beach at Night. Here, the word alone, I think, has some significant resonances as we get into this study. Now, my assumption here is that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt. And you've been with us ever since the very opening lines of Inscription, up through our introductory set of comments for Sea Drift, and then the poem that we've just finished, The World Below the Brine. Now, the background information for our Nortons will tell us that this poem, as the clef poem, clef here used in the sense of clue or key, the French word, of Leaves of Grass 1856 and number 12 of the Leaves of Grass group of 1860, the poem was more than twice the length of its present version. We're going to have something to say about this. And the thought of the clef of the universes is presented as an extended, candidly personal reflection. In 1867, as number 1 of a Leaves of Grass cluster, the poem was radically revised to its present form. We're going to talk about just how radically revised here in a bit. And in 1871, it took its present title as one of the seashore memories of the passage to India, and then in 1881 it was transferred to the Sea Drift group. Now, as we read through this, I'll just make a brief reference about some of the 19 some odd lines that were removed from this poem, and some of the most controversial of some of the words that Whitman ever wrote, not ending up in the deathbed edition of Leaves of Grass. Notice the poem will identify the word all 11 times as we play this game. So, let's enjoy the poem, On the Beach at Night Alone. On the beach at night alone, as the old mother sways her to and fro, singing her husky song, as I watch the bright stars shining, I think a thought of the cleft of the universes and of the future. A vast similitude interlocks all spheres, grown, ungrown, small, large, suns, moons, planets, all distances of place, however wide, all distances of time, all inanimate forms, all souls, all living bodies, though they be ever so different or in different worlds, all gaseous, watery, vegetable, mineral processes, the fishes, the brutes, all nations, colors, barbarisms, civilizations, languages, all identities that have existed or may exist on this globe or any globe, all lives and deaths, all of the past, present, future. This vast similitude spans them and always has spanned and shall forever span them and compactly hold and enclose them. Now, notice the poem will begin with the word alone, but the entire poem is about all, as in community. And to that degree, we have this interesting tension in this poem. Now, there are some who want to argue there are minor poems of Leaves of Grass. I'm going to make the argument that I think Whitman didn't see any of his poems as minor. He probably saw some poems as maybe more important. But all of these poems fit together in a certain kind of, can we say, puzzle of a type? That is to say, they all kind of cling together. They all kind of hold together. We're back to this idea of hugging. As I have said to you guys before, it's replete. All the way through, there's this attempt to try and reach out and try and embrace or grab. But notice, we're on the beach at night here alone. That is to say, when we talk about humans, is it really about I or is it about we? And as we have said so many times in room 303, it's silly to think that it's actually just my life and I can do it as I wish. First of all, I say that in a language that I didn't even choose to learn. It was provided to me from a young age. 2 people hooked up and exchanged fluids to produce me. I did not choose that. And to that degree, my whole life has been more about we than it's ever been about me. And yet, there is this tension where I obviously have my own life and I'm accountable for it and I have to live it. Here we'll begin to introduce some of this tension philosophically. On the beach at night alone, as the old mother sways, we've heard about the old crone, we've seen this already in Sea Drift, the ocean, to and fro, obviously symbolically, and then singing her husky song. You'll remember in Song of Myself, passage 36, this word husky being used for husky voices. as I watch the bright stars shining, and the minute we say that, we have to start smiling because maybe the last poem Keats ever wrote was Bright Star, and I've given a full set of comments on it at learnstrong.net. I think a thought of the clef of the universe's end of the future, two observations, clef here meaning that idea of the French word for key or clue, the thing that holds it all together. And notice it's universes, plural, and of the future. We're going to get back to more of this future in a little bit. However, in the original poem, Whitman then had some 19 lines, of which these lines were a part of it. And these are questionable lines, no question about it, and yet very controversial lines. And yet I want to share them with you just to give you a sense of how radical Whitman was for his day. The lines ran like this, a part of the 19 edited away. I am not uneasy, but I am to be beloved by young and old men, and to love them the same. I suppose the pink nipples of the breasts of women with whom I shall sleep will taste the same to my lips, but this is the nipple of a breast of my mother, always near and always divine to me, her true child and son. Now, if we can escape just the controversial nature of, this kind of language in Leaves of Grass, we will be taken back to the Iliad, you'll remember, book 22, when, of course, Hecuba, the mother of the soon-to-be slaughtered Hector, will expose her breast. And I've given full set of comments on this when I did all of the Iliad, and especially book 22 at learnstrong.net. But it's clear that Whitman is playing around with a very ancient motif, and here calling the ocean the old mother will play that game. And obviously, this will take us to the next set of lines. A vast similitude interlocks all. Now, the word similitude, Norton's will point out for us as the concept which is Hegelian for Norton, similar to Emerson's transcendental view, that the great macrocosm contains all macrocosms, perhaps is the sum of them. And to that degree, the influences were a part of our discussion in Song of Myself, lines 464 to 476. In other words, somehow, and notice the use of the word interlocks. Later it will be enclosed, now it's interlocks all. And now we're ready for 12 times the use of the word all gets used, 11 after this use of the word all here. All, and then notice, spheres, we're going to come to spheres. Again, at the end, we were in spheres as the last word of the previous poem, The World Below the Brine. Grown, ungrown, small, large, suns, moons, planets, in other words, all of the planetary movements, which takes us back, of course, to the ancient Greeks. So we're constantly paying attention from Pythagoras on to this kind of thing. Distances of place, however wide, and obviously we've been talking about space in Leaves of Grass already, especially for America. All distances of time. I told you guys, I think T.S. Eliot learned how to think about time in large measure from his study of Leaves of Grass. Time present and time past are both perhaps present and time future. The opening lines of Burnt Norton. All inanimate forms, which immediately takes us to Plato and, of course, his theory of the forms in Republic. And we've given full lectures on that as well at learnstrong.net. All souls, which takes us, of course, to Plato's Phaedo. All living bodies, though they be ever so different or in different worlds. And again, now the inclusivity of Whitman is profound. All gaseous, watery, vegetable, mineral processes, the fishes, the brutes. We've commented on Whitman's fascination with the new science. And then he says it, all nations, and then he says it, colors, barbarisms, civilizations, languages. In other words, the inclusivity to say we're all in this thing together. There is again, similitude. That is such an important part of understanding how he views his project of Leaves of Grass. All identities that have existed or may exist on this globe, again, spheres is the last word of the previous poem, or any globe. And of course, he loves this word globe. We've commented already in a number of times about how he loves to use this word. All lives and death, Song of Myself, passage 6 immediately comes to mind. All of the past, present, future, again, we've already quoted from T.S. Eliot's Burnt Norton. This vast similitude spans them. This is the clef. That is to say, this thing that can kind of somehow hold us all together. Now, this similitude For those of you that are going, where have I heard this already once before? And I'll help you to remind you that this is the opening lines of passage number 2 of Crossing Brooklyn Ferry. The impalpable sustenance of me from all things and all hours of the day, the simple, compact, well-joined scheme, myself disintegrated, everyone disintegrated, yet part of the scheme, the similitudes of the past and those of the future, the glories strung like beads on my smallest sights and hearings, on the walk in the street and the passage over the river, the current rushing, and on it goes. We've already dealt with that, but I just want to point out the ways in which this vast similitude now spans them and always has spanned, takes us back to an earlier passage from Brooklyn Ferry, and shall forever span them and compactly hold and enclose them. In other words, there's this hugging, this bringing together, which does what for us? Well, now as we're ready to finish, it challenges us with this idea that yes, we are individuals, but we're also individuals that are a part of, as of course has often been said, we are each water droplets, but the ocean itself. And I think that obviously that word picture works really well here with this poem. We're all connected, in other words, in some really, really powerful ways. We're all connected. We're all drawn in together. And I think for Whitman, as in our own time, there was so much political discord. There was so much fighting. There was so much your side versus my side. And I think what Whitman wanted us to understand was that, yes, there is a drop of water, but that drop of water is part of the larger ocean, and to that degree, we're all part of the ocean. At 2b, the repetition, some 12 times, the use of the word all. Notice that we'll start the poem with the word alone, but it's all, it's all, it's all. We're all in this, in profound ways, we're all in this together. At 3a, there's so many places I could go, obviously. We've already mentioned Emerson and Hegel, but I want to go to the Bhagavad Gita. And that notion that was so influential for Thoreau, and I think very influential for Whitman as well, to recognize all being in oneself and oneself in all being. This inclusivity that brings us all somehow closer together, that is the very root of the notion of love itself. Finally, at 3b, as we're going to try and own or make personal a poem, even though some consider this a minor poem, I can't see it that way. I see this as a profound statement of what Plotinus is trying to echo from Plato, this idea of our interconnectivity. How about this? Do you think of yourself as fundamentally alone or a part of an all? How do you see that for yourself? And in what ways do you continue to feel connected? I hope that our study of Leaves of Grass is helping you to feel increasingly connected, not just to Whitman, but to each of us. Thank you.